Israel, between earth and eternity, opening sequence in a land no larger than a whisper on the world's map, a place carved by time and touched by prophecy. Exists a paradox so immense it feels almost cosmic, a land where a traveler can move from winter to summer, from waves to wasteland, from prayer to silence, Saul in a single day. Israel, a strip of earth where nature and history, faith and conflict, dust and divinity exist side by side, sometimes, often in tension. Here, every horizon feels like a question. Every stone remembers. Every wind carries a story older than empires. This is a journey into one of the most complex landscapes on Earth. A place where the land speaks, one is willing to listen. From sea to desert, from the Mediterranean coast, where cool winds carry the scent of salt and blooming citrus. The land stretches eastward like a living tapestry, its colors shifting, its textures changing, its voice deepening. The sea breathes in slow rhythms. Waves curl like silver tongues against the shore. Fishermen cast their nets as they have for centuries. Joggers trace the first whispers of dawn, their shadows long and fragile on the promenade. But follow the wind inland, and the blue dissolves into red. The lush breezes fade into the scorching breath of the Negev desert, a place where the sun hangs heavy and the earth cracks like an ancient manuscript. Here, the light is merciless. It shimmers on the sand, bending shapes into mirages, painting illusions in the heat. This is the edge where nature forgets who it belongs to, where the land becomes an otherworldly stage, silent, immense, eternal, a dual land. And yet, on this same land stand two worlds, Israel and Gaza. Two lands held together not by peace, but by geography, and pulled apart by history, memory, and the burden of truth. Nature draws no borders. It does not know of conflict. Winds move freely across walls. Shadows cross boundaries without permission. But people carry stories that walls cannot contain. Tel Aviv introduction. If conflict weighs heavily across the region, then Tel Aviv rises like a breath of defiance, vibrant, restless, alive. A city that sparkles like a blade catching sunlight. A place where freedom pulses in neon and the rhythm of life never falters. Glass towers stand like declarations of modernity. Their reflective surfaces shimmer with the sea's blue hue, as though each tower borrowed its color from the horizon. By night, Tel Aviv dissolves into light. Bars, music, voices, footsteps, all merging into a single heartbeat. Along the coast, the Mediterranean sighs against the sand, its waves rising and falling like the pulse of the city itself. The white city. But beneath Tel Aviv's modern glow lies a quieter miracle, the white city. Over 4,000 Bauhaus buildings, built by Jewish architects who fled Nazi Germany, stand like an architectural memoir, a story written in balconies, columns, and smooth white facades. Each structure is a testament to survival, a reminder that exile can become design, that fear can turn into light, that a city can be built not only with stone, but with hope. Sunlight glides across these pale buildings, casting soft shadows that move with the day, whispering stories of a past both painful and triumphant. The threshold of Jaffa ventures south from Tel Aviv, and the tempo shifts. Old Jaffa rises like a memory surfacing from the sea, a cradle for a countless empires: Phoenician, Roman, Ottoman. Here, time feels elastic. Streets coil through stone archways. Cats lounge on warm steps. Fishermen mend their nets as they have for thousands of years. The sea seems slower here, as though the waves remember too much to move quickly. And somewhere along the rocks, myths linger like perfume in old air. Stories of Andromeda, of chains, of heroes etched into the coastline like an eternal rumor. The sacred city appears, but travel inland, moving toward the hills where the land rises like folded pages, and a city emerges that the world has never forgotten. Jerusalem, a place where faith converges, where conflict and holiness share the same narrow streets, where prayers rise above rooftops like smoke ascending from history itself. Judaism, Christianity, Islam. 3. Great religions looking upon the same stones, tracing their origins to the same hills, anchoring their hopes in the same ancient heartbeat. Jerusalem is not merely a city. It is humanity's collective memory, a mirror where the soul of the world examines itself. As we leave the manicured terraces of Haifa behind, the Mediterranean breathed deeper along the shoreline. The horizon stretches like an unwritten chapter where foam meets ancient stone, and every wave seems to echo wanderers who once traveled these same waters. Just north of Haifa, the landscape shifts. Cliffs rise like frozen waves, guarding the coast as if protecting old stories whispered between sea and limestone. This is Rosh Hanikra, Israel's northernmost point along the Mediterranean gateway, carved by time, wind, and salt. The white chalk cliffs glow under the sun, almost translucent. At their base, the sea has spent thousands of years sculpting grottos, networks of turquoise chambers hidden inside the rock. Visitors descend through a cable car, the steepest in the world, like a slow dive into the Earth's memory. Inside, the sea sings. The sound of waves colliding with stone resonate like a heartbeat, steady, patient, eternal. It is here that nature becomes a cathedral without walls, where every drop of water is a hymn, and every gust of wind a reminder that creation is ongoing. In the distance, the faint outline of Lebanon hovers like a shadowed promise. This boundary, both fragile and firm, tells a story of separation, of nations drawn apart, but still sharing the same tides, the same salt, the same horizon. Beyond the cliffs, the Galilee gradually descends into softer hills, fertile valleys, and streams that have witnessed prophets, kingdoms, and migrations. Terraced orchards line the hillsides like green staircases ascending toward the sky. Olive trees, twisted, silver-leafed, and ancient rude, themselves in histories deeper than any written chronicle. Eastward, the land folds into the Hula Valley, once a swampland buzzing with life, later drained for farmland, and eventually restored into a sanctuary for thousands of migrating birds. Every autumn and spring, the skies above the valley transform into a ballet of wings cranes. Storks, pelicans siege, tracing invisible roots carved into instinct long before nations existed. Here, dawn breaks differently. Mist rises from the wetlands like incense, drifting past reeds that sway gently in the cool air. The cries of birds echo across the valley, blending with a soft rustle of water on orchestra, older than civilization itself. At the heart of this valley lies Agman Hula, a bird haven where the relationship between humans and nature is rewritten daily. Farmers guide flocks with tractors, ecologists monitor migratory patterns, and visitors pedal along quiet paths as if gliding through a living canvas. To the north, the valley narrows and the hills grow steeper. Rivers feed the land, the bend, the Haspani streams that eventually become the Jordan River. The water is icy, clear, and ancient, rushing through moss-covered stones and fig trees that lean toward the sound of its flow. This region witnessed empires rise and fall, The Canaanites, the Israelites, the Romans, the Crusaders. And yet, through every conquest and collapse, the rivers continue their journey undisturbed, reminding humanity that nature moves to a rhythm beyond the pulse of politics. Climbing higher into the foothills of Mount Hermon, the air cools. Villages cling to the sloped stone houses, narrow roads, orchards blooming with cherries and apples. The scent of wood smoke drifts from chimneys during winter, while in summer, laughter echoes across terraced fields. Life here is slower, softer, more intimate. Among these hills lies Nimrod Fortress, perched like a vigilant eagle above the valley. Built in the 13th century, its walls stretch across a mountain ridge, overlooking the entire region. Every stone, every arch, every hidden passage whispers stories of invasions, alliances, betrayals. Standing atop its highest tower, one sees everything. The snow-dusted Hermon, the Golan Plateau, the rolling Galilee below. The wind sweeps across the ruins, carrying both the chill of winter and the scent of blooming wildflowers. Here, time does not simply pass its circles, echoes, returns. Descending once more into the valley, the land begins to grow lush again. Green fields ripple like fabric under the wind. Cattle graze lazily under eucalyptus trees planted decades ago to claim once marshy soil. The Jordan River, still youthful, winds southward narrow, gentle, crystalline. Along its banks lies Tel Dan, one of the richest archaeological sites in the north. Here stand the remains of ancient Israelite gates, an entire city built from mud brick and stone. Among these ruins sits the world's oldest discovered arch, thousands of years old, silent but unbroken, bridging past and present. Visitors walk wooden pathways shaded by towering trees. Water trickles through small channels, pooling in clear ponds where fish dart between roots and fallen leaves. The forest seems enchanted, a rare oasis where history hides among branches and roots. Beyond the shaded trails, the river splits and winds its way toward the Sea of Galilee. Feeding communities, nurturing orchards, sustaining life in a place where summers blaze and winters freeze. And always, the birds return guided, not by borders or governments, but by an ancient compass written into their wings. In this small corner of the world, diversity thrives. Villages of Druze, Circassians, Muslims, Christians, Jews, each preserving customs as old as the land itself. The sounds of prayer, the aroma of spices, the cadence of languages blend into a mosaic of identities that coexist, overlap, and sometimes clash, but never disappear. The north of Israel is not defined only by its beauty, but by its resilience. Earthquakes have shaken these hills. Wars have scarred them. Migrations have reshaped them. Yet the land remains fertile, breathing, alive. Every hill is a memory. Every valley is a cradle. As the sun begins to sink behind the western mountains, golden light spills across the entire region. Fields shimmer, streams glow, and the sky melts into shades of rose and amber. Evening settles softly in the north, gently, reverently, like a blessing whispered over an ancient promise. South of the Hula Valley, the land narrows again, guiding travelers toward a basin embraced by rolling hills. As the elevation drops, the air warms. Olive groves fade into palms, and the scent of citrus begins to drift across the breeze. This is the gateway to one of the most iconic places on Earth, a place where geography and scripture blend into a single horizon. The Sea of Galilee, also known as Lake Kinneret, this harp-shaped body of water has stirred the imagination of civilizations for nearly 2 millennia. Its waves are modest, its size humbly, its influence stretches across continents. Morning here feels sacred. Mist rises from the water like a veil lifting from an ancient stage. Fishermen push their boats into the lake, long shadows stretching across the shore. Their nets glide silently through the cool water, repeating gestures passed down through generations. The hills that encircle the lake glow with soft gold. They rise gently at first, then dramatically, forming natural amphitheaters of stone and earth. Small villages cling to their slopes, quiet, timeless, unhurried. On the northwest shore lies Capernaum, the ancient fishing village, often called the town of Jesus. Here, basalt stones outline the remains of homes, courtyards, and a synagogue whose white pillars still stand like silent witnesses. Visitors walk among the ruins, listening to the wind rustle through the reeds, imagining voices that once filled these narrow streets. Nearby, the Mount of Beatitude rises above the water. The hill is gentle, carpeted with green grass and dotted with wild flowers. It is said that here, overlooking the lake, some of the most famous words in human history were spoken words about mercy, humility, peace, words that continue to echo across nations and centuries. From this elevation, the Sea of Galilee looks delicate, almost fragile. Its surface changes constantly with the mood of the wind. Silver at dawn, sapphire at midday, violet as evening nears. Yet beneath its beauty lies a volatile character. Sudden winds can descend, from the surrounding cliffs, turning calm waters into churning waves within minutes. Storms rise unexpectedly, fierce and unapologetic reminders that even gentle landscapes can carry ancient power. To the south, the Jordan River emerges once more, traveling along a winding path through lush greenery. Pilgrims gather at its banks at Yardnet, where waters shimmer under the sun like polished glass. White robes billow as people step into the river, seeking renewal, connection, or redemption. Each ripple carries their hopes downstream, folding them into the current's quiet journey. Following the river's descent, the land opens wider. Here lies the Jordan Valley, long and fertile, stretching like a green ribbon across an otherwise arid region. Banana plantations, date fields, vineyards, and farmland quilt the landscape in geometric patterns. Sprinklers turn at dawn, throwing arcs of light through droplets suspended in the air. Along this route, temperatures climb. The sun hangs lower, heavier. Even the wind feels warm, carrying stories from the desert beyond. Stray a few kilometers east or west, and the green dissolves abruptly, giving way to barren hills carved by time. Their folds and ridges resembling the skin of some ancient, sleeping creature. The valley gradually lowers into a dramatic geological scar. The Jordan Rift, one of the deepest depressions on the planet. The descent is slow, subtle, relentless. Palm groves appear. Desert cliffs sharpen. The air thickens with heat. And then, suddenly, the land breaks open to reveal a sight unlike anywhere on Earth: the Dead Sea. A shimmering expanse of blue, framed by mountains of copper and red. A place where water mirrors the sky with uncanny clarity, yet hides a harsh and silent truth beneath its surface. The Dead Sea is not merely a lake, it is an other world. A realm where life cannot survive, where salt crystallizes on rocks like frost, where the air tastes metallic and the horizon bends in the heat like liquid glass. At 430 meters below sea level, this is the lowest land point on Earth. The sun feels closer here, sharper, as though drawn to this deep scar in the planet's crust. Waves break in slow motion, thick with minerals. No birds skim its surface. No fish disturb its depths. Yet people float effortlessly, their bodies held up by the density of the water. Laughter echoes across the shoreline as visitors lean back, weightless, like stars drifting in space. Salt formations rise along the shore, strange, sculptural, dazzling in the sunlight. Some resemble coral reefs. Others form hexagonal patterns that crack underfoot. It is beauty born from extremity. But beneath this beauty lies a quiet tragedy. The Dead Sea is shrinking. Each year, its shoreline retreats, leaving behind sinkholes and salt plains where water once glimmered. Its disappearance is not sudden, but steady, a reminder that even ancient wonders are fragile. To the west, high above the Dead Sea, rises a mesa of stone crowned with ancient walls, Masada, a place of resistance, of tragedy, of determination carved into rock. Its cliffs are sheer, impossible, defiant. The serpentine path that winds to the summit feels like a pilgrimage into the past. At dawn, when the desert glows pink and orange, shadows stretch across the fortress like fingers reaching through time. Standing atop Masada, the world below looks eternal. The desert rolls endlessly. The Dead Sea gleams like molten silver, and the sky opens wide, vast, unbroken, infinite. Here, in this remote kingdom of rock and sun, the human spirit once faced its darkest hour and refused to bend. In this land, every sunrise and every shadow carries the memory of civilizations long gone. From the rugged hills of Judea to the fertile plains stretching toward the Mediterranean, countless empires once marched, dreamed, built, and vanished. But here, among these stones, nothing truly disappears. The past lingers quiet, persistent, waiting to be rediscovered. Centuries ago, the kingdoms of Israel and Judah rose with hope, ambition, and faith. Their kings ruled from fortified hills. Their prophets spoke words that would echo through millennia. And their people, scattered many times over, carried their identity like a flame kept alive in darkness. Meanwhile, Palestine's ancient inhabitants, Philistines, Arameans, and Nabateans, left behind stories carved into rock and clay, tales of trade, conflict, and culture flowing along the very roots that shaped human history. This land was never empty. It was a crossroads, a place where caravans brought spices, silk, and ideas, a place where armies marched to claim what they believed destiny had promised, and a place where ordinary people simply lived, loved, worked, and dreamed. Then came the Romans, engineers of empire, masters of order. They built roads that still lie beneath modern streets, arches that still defy time, and cities that blended local tradition with imperial grandeur. Under Roman rule, Jerusalem transformed. It became a melting pot of faiths, a battleground of ideas, and, eventually, the birthplace of a movement that would reshape the world, Christianity. Here, in this narrow strip of earth, a man from Nazareth preached peace, compassion, and revolution of the soul. His followers would spread his message to the edges of the empire, forever intertwining the fate of this land with billions around the globe. But history rarely moves in straight lines. Revolts shook the region. Temples fell. Communities were displaced, and yet identity endured. Faith endured. Hope endured. Across centuries, new powers rose. Byzantines with their mosaics and monastic traditions. Arab caliphates who brought language, art, and knowledge that still shape the region today. And later, the Ottomans, whose rule would stretch for 400 years, long enough to imprint their architecture, law, and cultural rhythm into daily life. During these eras, villages expanded, cities flourished, and a uniquely Palestinian identity took shape rooted in family, land, agriculture, and a heritage of hospitality. Olive trees, some older than entire nations, stood witness to every shift in power. Harvest after harvest, generation after generation, they remained. A reminder that the land remembers everything. Yet, in a modern age, the world changed faster than ever before. Empires collapsed. Borders were redrawn by those far away. And to peoples carrying deep historical roots, each holding sacred claims, began moving toward a collision neither desired, but both were pulled into. Jewish communities, returning to an ancestral homeland after centuries of persecution, saw this land as refuge, promise, and rebirth. Palestinian families, whose villages and farms had stood for generations, felt their world shifting beneath their feet, often without their consent and sometimes without warning. These parallel stories of longing, of return, of loss set the stage for a conflict that would define the 20th century and shape the 21st. But to understand the present, we must first trace the path from these ancient histories into the storm of modern geopolitics. The First World War shattered the Ottoman Empire. Into the vacuum stepped new powers: Britain, France. Mandates and ambitions. Promises were made to Jews seeking a national home, and to European interests looking to secure strategic control of the region. It was a moment when hope and confusion tangled together, setting events in motion that no one could fully foresee. Under the British Mandate, cities modernized, railways expanded, immigration increased, communities mingled, traded, debated, and sometimes clashed. Jerusalem, always holy, became political. Hebron, Jaffa, Haifa became microcosms of a growing tension. Still, many believed peace was possible. Neighbors drank tea together. Farmers shared irrigation canals. Children played in the same streets. But competing dreams, each rooted in history, each deeply felt, grew harder to reconcile. As Europe marched toward catastrophe in World War II, events here accelerated. The Holocaust devastated Jewish life across the continent. The urgency for a safe homeland intensified beyond anything imagined before. Meanwhile, Palestinians feared becoming strangers on their own land, fearing displacement, fearing loss of identity, fearing a future they would not shape. Two peoples, two traumas, two hopes, all converging on a land barely larger than a small country. As the war ended, the world looked toward Palestine, seeing not a distant conflict, but a crossroads where morality, history, and geopolitics collided. And soon, a decision would be made. A decision that would ignite celebration for some, catastrophe for others, and conflict for generations. But that moment, one of the most consequential in modern history, deserves its own chapter. Because to understand what came next, we must step into the year 1948. The year is 1948, a year that would reshape the Middle East forever. For Jewish survivors of the Holocaust, it was a moment of rebirth. For Palestinians, it marked the beginning of a catastrophe still felt today. Two narratives, two realities, one land. As the British prepared to leave, the United Nations proposed a plan. The territory would be divided into two states, one Arab, while Jerusalem would remain international. To the Jewish community, exhausted by genocide and longing for a safe homeland. But to Palestinians, who were the majority population at the time, it felt profoundly unjust, granting over half their land to a state they never agreed to create. Tension ignited. Clashes spread from city to city. What had been simmering for years finally erupted into open conflict. Then, on May 14th, 1948, in Tel Aviv, David Ben-Gurion declared the establishment of the State of Israel. The announcement was met with joyous celebrations, dancing in the streets, tears of relief, the belief that after 2,000 years of exile and persecution, the Jewish people once again had a home. But across the hills, valleys, and coastal towns of Palestine, the news struck like a storm. Fear spread. Families packed bags, not knowing if they would return. Some fled battle zones, believing they would be gone for only a few days. Others were pushed out as violence escalated. Arab armies from neighboring countries entered the conflict, hoping to defend the Palestinians and stop the new state from expanding. But the war unfolded differently than anyone expected. Israel formed amid chaos, quickly organized. Battles raged across Galilee, the West Bank, the Negev, and the coast. By the time the fighting stopped, Israel controlled far more territory than the UN had allocated. Egypt controlled Gaza, and approximately 750,000 Palestinians had become refugees, overnight, a trauma remembered as the Nakba, the catastrophe. Entire villages vanished, some destroyed, others emptied, and renamed. Olive groves that once belonged to Palestinian farmers now stood behind new borders. Memories were packed into suitcases, carried across deserts, into refugee camps, and into generations that would grow up hearing stories of a homeland they had never seen. For Israelis, the story was different, one of survival against overwhelming odds. A nation built in the shadow of genocide. A place where a dispersed people could finally feel safe, connected, and sovereign. Thus began to parallel identities forged in fire, one celebrating independence, the other mourning displacement. Both narratives deeply true to those who lived them. In the decades that followed, armistice lines solidified, but peace did not. The borders, drawn in green ink on fragile maps, became known as the green line-up boundary that persists in political debate even today. Refugee camps in Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, Gaza, and the West Bank grew into tightly packed cities full of children, full of dreams, and full of questions about the land their families lost. Meanwhile, Israel built new institutions, welcomed immigrants from around the world, and developed rapidly, its cities growing, its economy stabilizing, and its military becoming one of the strongest in the region. But both peoples carried wounds. Wounds that shaped every decision, every negotiation, every moment of fear or hope. Then, in 1967, everything changed again. The Six-Day War erupted, brief, fierce, and transformative. In less than a week, Israel captured the West Bank, East Jerusalem, Gaza, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. The map of the Middle East was rewritten once more's time, even more dramatically. For Israelis, the victory felt miraculous. Defensive war fought with astonishing speed. For Palestinians, it marked the beginning of a long military occupation. Checkpoints, settlements, military orders, and restrictions became daily realities. In the refugee camps, hope pulsed again. Perhaps, they thought, now the world would finally understand their struggle. But geopolitics moved slowly, and their lives remained suspended between past and future. Across the region, a new sense of Palestinian identity crystallized, defined not just by memory, but by resistance, culture, poetry, and a longing for dignity. At the same time, Israel grappled with its own dilemmas: security, demography, and the moral weight of ruling over another people. Debate deepened. Protests grew. Generations questioned the path forward. By the 1970s and 80s, the conflict had become global, shaped by Cold War politics, regional alliances, and international diplomacy. The world watched, intervened, negotiated, but peace remained elusive. Still, amid struggle, life continued. Children went to school. Markets opened at dawn. Weddings filled nights with music. And on both sides of the divide, ordinary people try to build normal lives in a place where normalcy was a privilege. As the century approached its end, a new chapter began, one filled with cautious optimism. Bold negotiations and heartbreaking setbacks, because soon leaders from both sides would meet face to face, for the first time in history, to talk not as enemies, but as to peoples searching desperately for a way out of the cycle, and the world would hold its breath. The early 1990s, a moment when the impossible suddenly felt within reach. After decades of conflict, a quiet shift was happening. Whispers of negotiation, secret meetings, and cautious hope. Both Israelis and Palestinians were exhausted. Exhausted by war, by occupation, by fear, by funerals. And for the first time, leaders on both sides began asking the same question: is there another way? In Norway, far from the gunfire of Gaza and the checkpoints of the West Bank, representatives from Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization met in secrecy. No cameras, no diplomats in suits, just human beings talking, arguing, imagining a different future. What emerged from those rooms was historic. The Oslo Accords. On a warm September day in 1993, on the lawn of the White House, Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat faced each other. Two men shaped by war. Two men who had once sworn never to speak, standing side by side. President Bill Clinton opened his arms, as if urging history itself to close the gap. And then Arafat extended his hand. Rabin hesitated, just for a heartbeat. But then he reached out. The handshake lasted only seconds, but for millions watching, it felt like a doorway opening. The agreement promised mutual recognition. Israel would acknowledge the Palestinian people. The PLO would recognize Israel's right to exist in peace and security. And for the first time ever, Palestinians would gain limited self-rule in parts of Gaza and the West Bank. A new authority was born, the Palestinian Authority, tasked with governing its people and building the foundations of a future state. Across the region, hope surged. Families imagined a life without checkpoints. Farmers imagined harvesting their land in peace. Israeli parents imagined sending their children to school without fear. But peace is never simple, and in the Middle East, it is never guaranteed. Almost immediately, extremists on both sides rejected the agreement. Some Palestinians felt Oslo offered too little, leaving settlements untouched and borders undefined. Some Israelis felt Oslo risked too much, trusting those they had fought for decades. Tension rose, violence flickered, but the hope remained fragile, trembling, alive. Then came November 4th, 1995, a night that would change everything. At a peace rally in Tel Aviv, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin walked off the stage, smiling at the crowd, chanting his name. Moments later, he was shot by an Israeli extremist opposed to the peace process. The shock rippled across the world. Israelis wept in the streets. Palestinians mourned a man they once saw only as an enemy, but who became their chance for a future. And with Rabin's death, the fragile bridge being built between the two peoples began to crack. In the years that followed, negotiations continued. The Hebron Agreement, Camp David, Taba. Moments of progress, moments of collapse. But on the ground, life was changing. Settlements expanded. Checkpoints multiplied. Jerusalem grew more divided. And frustration simmered, especially among Palestinian youth who felt promises were being broken. Then, in September 2000, a spark ignited the streets. The Second Intifada erupted, a wave of anger, protests, violence, and despair. Military operations devastated Palestinian towns and refugee camps. Both peoples descended into one of the darkest chapters since 1948. Tens of thousands wounded, families shattered, hope buried under rubble and fear. International leaders tried to intervene. Roadmaps for peace were drafted, conferences held, declarations made. But wounds ran too deep, mistrust too strong, and every attempt at peace seemed to crumble under the weight of history. Still, even in the darkest moments, life persisted. In Gaza, fishermen cast their nets into restricted waters. In Tel Aviv, beachgoers crowded the shoreline, trying to escape the tension. In the West Bank, olive farmers bent to the earth, tending trees older than empires. Ordinary people on both sides, longing for something so simple, a normal life. By the mid-2000s, the conflict shifted yet again. Israel withdrew its settlers and soldiers from Gaza in 2005. Some saw it as a step toward peace. Others warned it would lead to more instability. Internal Palestinian politics erupted the following year, dividing Palestinian leadership between Fatah in the West Bank and Hamas in Gaza. Two governments, two visions, one people split. Gaza fell under blockade. Wars erupted in 2008, 2012, 2014, and beyond, each leaving deep scars, each reinforcing a cycle no one could escape. Meanwhile, Israel continued to change, expanding technologically, economically, and militarily. A rising global power, but one still wrestling with its own identity, its security, and its moral responsibilities. And Palestinians continued to resist, organize, negotiate, and dream, fighting not only against military occupation, but against the fear that the world was forgetting their struggle. As the 21st century gained momentum, both peoples found themselves at a crossroads once again. Two nations tied together by history, geography, faith, and pain, unable to separate, unable to unite, caught in a story older than any living generation. And yet, the story is not finished, because in this land, hope has a way of surviving, even in the hardest times.